Hi, I'm John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In these challenging economic times, it's imperative that our residents and businesses band together to not only shop Elmhurst, but buy Elmhurst whenever possible. We have great stores in our city center, Spring Road, Butterfield Road, York and Villette Streets, St. Charles and Route 83, North Avenue and Lake Street, along North York and even Grand Avenue. I ask for your help. Let's keep our tax dollars in Elmhurst.
The Elmhurst Historical Museum, located in downtown Elmhurst, is proud to present award-winning exhibits for visitors of all ages. Our Adult Tea Time Talk series, family programs, and special events make learning about history interesting and fun. Admission is free, and on-site parking is available. Visit the Elmhurst Historical Museum soon. Call us today, or go to our website for the latest program details.
People of Elmhurst, Illinois. This is Elmhurst Now. I'm Ken Bartels, co-host along with Mayor Pete DeCiani, and tonight we have the special privilege of talking to a man with a 40-year Elmhurst story, soon to be retired Elmhurst City Manager Tom Borchert. And Tom, I want to start the first question with, it's 1971. You've graduated from Valparaiso with a BS in civil engineering. You immediately decide, of course, to apply for a job in Elmhurst, Illinois, and you assumed, of course, that you'd be here 40 years later. I'm sure that's how it went, right?
Not exactly, Ken. Not exactly at all. I figured after having worked for People's Gas Light and Coke Company in Chicago after graduating, and I'd worked there for summers going to Valparaiso, that maybe my next job would be a little bit longer than those 7 or 8 months, maybe a year, 2 years, and I'd be on to the next assignment. And frankly, got different assignments in Elmhurst and never left.
So tell me about that first day in 1971. What do you remember?
I was pretty scared. I was happy that I found the place on time and was able to get there and meet the boss and go to my assigned location, which, as I recall, was a big meeting room. And there were a lot of folks in that room staring at me as I came in, and I, for many years, didn't know why they were staring at me, but they were all told that I was going to be the new boss, and I didn't know that. That's not what I was hired to do. So it was a strange beginning. It was a strange beginning.
What kind of challenges were going on in 1971, Tom, as you recall?
Well, it was a small group that I worked for. I worked for the Director of Public Works. My title was the Assistant Director of Public Works, but my responsibilities were with civil engineering, and civil engineering is a lot of what cities have with streets and sewer and water and bridges. That's civil engineering stuff. So I was very excited about the opportunity to be more hands-on in a small group, as opposed to just having a little to do in a very large organization that I came from, the People's Gas Company. And that's what I got involved with. Immediately was just immersed in the public works, construction and maintenance of the city of Elmhurst back then. Sidewalks and streets and the annual maintenance programs to maintain the even 1971, a very quality community. I was very impressed to be able to be associated with it, and it had a wonderful reputation, and wanted to be a part of making it better.
And back then too, what did our water system look like? I remember we moved in 1976 to Elmhurst, and so a few years after you started, but the water system was a little different. Many things have changed. So can you maybe shed some light there?
Well, yeah, the water, I grew up in Chicago, lived in Chicago, and I never knew about red water until I came to Elmhurst back in the 70s. And I remember one day, and I don't know how it ended up on my desk, but there was a pile of red underwear that was deposited in my desk. Is like, what are you going to do with this? Mr. Engineer, this is not right. This isn't right. But Elmhurst had a deep well supply. The water came from water aquifers over 1,000 feet deep, and that water going through the aquifers, the rock formations, would pick up a lot of iron, and that iron would then settle in the pipes, be fine while it was in the pipes, but any shakeup of the system would be like, remember my grandmother's Christmas snow scene where there was no snow, but then you'd shake it up and it would all be there. You'd shake up that water system, that red stuff would be in the water, and then it would show up in your washing machine and then stick on your clothes, and it was a problem. Very hard water, and very difficult to keep those wells operating on a regular basis. I remember seeing at the various deep well sites when a well would break, pipe after pipe after pipe, 1,000 feet of pipe would be pulled out of that hole in the ground and then lined up while they would be then trying to fix whatever was broken 1,000 feet down. It was a different way of water supply. The DuPage Water Commission now provides Elmhurst water, and a wonderful improvement over those years ago.
And the Water Commission, of course, sort of an outgrowth of Robert Palmer, the first city manager, someone, a pioneer for the idea. Now, for our audience, there's only been 2 city managers in the history of this type of municipal government in the city of Elmhurst, Robert Palmer and yourself. What was it like working with Bob Palmer?
Bob Palmer was an icon. He was respected mightily by his peers. He was a wonderful character, but a character. There was stories of Mr. Palmer's approach towards getting assignments completed, which I've credited him with being the original Nike guy, which is just do it. When the conversation was over, you knew it was over. It was time to go do it, get it done, and he got it done. He was strategic. He was visionary, and he saw a problem with that water supply and set about solving that problem, and had a series of problems, but a long, many-year story. Cutting it short, was the individual that drove originally the Tree Towns Water Commission, Elmhurst, Villa Park, and Lombard, that eventually grew into the entire DuPage Water Commission that brought Lake Michigan water out for all of DuPage County.
Well, I know the mayor wants to elaborate on this question, but I'll go ahead and ask it first, and that is the story of the underpass. First, if you remember the first time you ever heard about an underpass project, and then your role in bringing it to fruition in 1977.
That was a huge project for any community. And as I look back upon some of the huge projects that Elmhurst undertook them in many cases well before other communities would take on similar projects. That Elmhurst Underpass project I heard about as an assistant to the Director of Public Works, and then as the Director of Public Works, I began to understand that it was a notion that had been first raised in the late 50s and the 60s, and talked about much, debated much, frankly because of the huge freight traffic that would go east-west through Elmhurst to the largest freight yards in America, I think at the time, Proviso Yards. Freight trains were either trying to get started, going slow, or trying to slow down to stop, going out of the Proviso Yards, which tied up Elmhurst mightily, and many problems then, as there still are, if you don't take the underpass with that traffic cutting through the Elmhurst community. It was a great project. It was talked about at the Zoning and Planning Commission. The strategic planners of the community were trying to figure out how to get it done. But again, not unlike many other things in Elmhurst, it got done after citizens said, enough is enough. We gotta help our professional staff and help our mayor and help our city council. We're going to get behind get the underpass done drive, and it was started that way by Lady Jean Baker and I think League of Women Voter folks then rallied and started a referendum campaign to make it happen.
Yeah, I remember, having moved in the mid-'70s, I was about 9, 10 years old when we moved to Elmhurst, and we moved from the city. Lake Michigan water, you had all your resources real close to you, and Elmhurst had well water, and we got a hospital that's phenomenal hospital, with this train track that's pretty much dividing the town in half, and very difficult to get emergency vehicles around town. So, in my opinion, what you guys did in the 70s with the Lake Michigan water and the underpass were probably the two largest physical infrastructure fixes that really, I think, brought Elmhurst into the next level, and gave our hospital the ability to succeed, and I'm sure saved a lot of lives in the meantime as well too. So quite a feat. I remember it being built. I remember the folks talking about it, and the monies and all the different things that are discussed when something major like that is done in your town.
Well, as an engineer, that had to have been a fascinating project.
It was very interesting and incredibly rewarding to be a part of it, to understand the planning and then the options, the alternatives, the sorting out of this or that, and let's do it this way. The route itself, as it involved the displacing private properties, businesses. There was a huge need to collaborate with the Chamber of Commerce at the time, the downtown Elmhurst businesses. That small businessman is clearly every day a bit at risk relative to future economic success. And with a project like that was a multi-year project, changing traffic patterns, changing the way to get to the store,
Rerouting the trains themselves.
It was a huge undertaking. The first part of that project was the detour. Had to get the traffic out of the way of the project. In this case, it was to get the trains out of the way of the project. It was building a bypass train track. It was a huge project, and a lot of fun to be a part of and to watch it get finished.
I want to fast forward now. We're going to shoot straight through department or director of public works and assistant city manager. We're going to right to 1984. You're the city manager, and what had changed about the challenges by 1984? Underpass is open. What's going on in 1984 when you become city manager?
Well, Elmhurst, I think, grew up a lot through the 70s and early 80s, and the Selectric typewriter was no longer the go-to device for preparing the agendas for the mayor and city council. Computers were just beginning to be found in workplace. It was a huge transition of change ongoing on basically every front. The staff of the city, when I first started in 1971, I think the city manager, the director of public works that I worked for, and myself, and the attorney were the only folks with college degrees that were actually working at City Hall. There were some other degrees sprinkled around in other workplaces, but the education was not nearly what it was in 84 and today. Everything was being lifted to much higher levels of standards and of performance on the fronts. I think cities and villages across the country were doing the same thing.
Shortly after becoming city manager, shortly in the sense that it's 3 years, I think when you say 1987 to people in Elmhurst, if they were around then, you don't have to say much else. The disastrous Salt Creek flooding of 1987, you're still a relatively new city manager at that point, 3 years into a tenure that now has grown significantly. In hindsight, purely in hindsight, and I guess quite frankly in light of some of the difficulties we had last summer, could we have seen that coming?
Actually, we did see it coming, but to prepare for it and to be able to do anything about it was frankly unacceptable, because it wasn't the popular thing to invest that much in something that had never happened. That creek had never flooded that significantly to anybody's recent history. And I say that the city saw it coming to a limited degree. Those were the early years of the FEMA, Flood Emergency Management Agency, and they created a law that required 100-year floodplains that are those areas that flood with a creek on a 1% event, an event that has the chance of occurring once in 100 years, so sometimes referred to as a 100-year event. So those floodplain maps were mapped for the first time ever in Elmhurst for Salt Creek. I recall distributing those maps and then notifying folks that were in the regulatory floodplain, and which pretty much approximated the limits of the '87 flood. And the folks that we were notifying that they were in a floodplain were incredibly critical of City Hall and of FEMA and of the whole notion, and frankly were stating that this is rubbish. This is another government concept gone goofy. This is, don't you understand? We are 7 blocks from Salt Creek. Salt Creek is way over there. You can't even see it from here. This is never going to flood. We had to explain that it was a possibility. You needed, if you had insurance, to get this floodplain insurance thing. And then it was a couple of years later, it started raining in August and just didn't stop. I thought, it'll stop pretty soon. It doesn't rain this long. And it just kept raining and raining and raining. And it was the 1% event, and it was an extraordinarily negative event, the worst event, worse than June and July 2010, in my opinion. It changed the community. It changed the perception of what government work needs to be in Elmhurst. It changed lives. It brought a lot of the Elmhurst community together. It drove a lot of Elmhurst families apart, including some Elmhurst employees ended up, because of that traumatic event, that was what broke some marriages, broke many friendships, but did, on the positive side, bring a lot of the community together, and for a decade thereafter was the focus of infrastructure projects, which the City Council embraced and approved and financed, and I enjoyed being a part of overseeing the construction of those projects, all of which worked. In June and July, the creek didn't flood in Elmhurst.
Absolutely.
Yeah, having been a young man when it happened, 1984, I was a senior at York High School, and you were brought in as city manager. In 1987, I was a junior at Elmhurst College. But what I recall when I was when that event happened, and I do recall the lengths of days where it just rained and rained and rained. We lived in Highland and Grantley, so we were in a very high area. But we had friends, that lived close to the creek, off of West Avenue, and then we had, my best friend Jim Carani, who lived right off of Sailor and Jackson, and literally had to take a boat to his house, and it was just, devastation in a lot of areas, which is really, really tough. Seeing people deal with water is very, very frustrating. It's something that you don't wish on anybody, But I think the comparison of the two events, the one that we had last year versus '87, was fortunately, the fact that Salt Creek stayed in Salt Creek, and we saw a lot of street issues, which we're in the process of examining to see how we can better. But I agree. You know, the difference between the two events were night and day. Although the people that suffered in the 2010 event definitely need to, you know, they need to be addressed and heard. But it's challenging because at what level do you build it for? You know,
exactly. If you flooded, you flooded.
Yeah.
From a community perspective, 87 was worse because there was far more flooding, and it was for 3 weeks. The creek came up and stayed there for 3 weeks before it went down. So folks couldn't clean up for 3 weeks. So that just built and built and built the pressure, the frustration, the anxiety. In June or July 2010, it wasn't the creek, it was the rain that fell, then it ran away. As you know, Mayor, 2 days later, the city was on the case with the support of the full city council saying, start the cleanup and start the repairs and get people back to normal as fast as possible. So the cleanup.
Well, the similarity between the two events is one of the similarities. Rather, is the incredible response of city leaders. Mayor Quinn in '87, Mayor DeCiani in 2010. Yourself in leadership, the city council, in terms of acknowledging that there are issues. Some can be solved, some can't be solved, and then moving forward to finding solutions. I mean, as a private citizen of Elmhurst during both those events, tremendous appreciation for the fact that there's an opportunity to look for solutions, and out of that comes the quarry and the berms and expanded lift stations and now a task force that will be looking, I think it's 5 specific subcommittees looking for issues and problems and solutions through all those.
That's correct. But we were referring to earlier, if you're the house that flooded, if it was your place, your home, your valuables, it's devastating. But again, from a city perspective, 87 was far worse and a different type of a flood than the 2010 flood. But many of the creek issues have been resolved. We've now got major support to get after improving, if and however possible, the remaining issues.
Okay, gentlemen, we're going to take a very short break here. This is Elmhurst Now. We're talking with City Manager Tom Borchert as he concludes 40 years of incredible service to Elmhurst, Illinois. We'll be right back.
Visit elmhurst.org to explore the new City of Elmhurst website. Find out the latest Elmhurst news, pay utility bills and parking tickets, report concerns, and much more. Elmhurst.org is an ideal way to discover what Elmhurst offers your business, your family, your life. Have you visited the Elmhurst Public Library lately? The Kids Library is a wonderful place, especially with our many exciting children's programs. The second floor is home to the adult and teen collections. From research to magazines, we've got it. We have more than 80 computers throughout the building. Or bring your own laptop. The entire building has wireless access. Need a quiet place to study? Try our silent study rooms. Book one of our spacious meeting rooms for your group. Our convenient book drop and drive-up window make picking up and returning library materials a breeze. And don't forget, EPL is open 24/7 online at elmhurstpubliclibrary.org.
Welcome back to Elmhurst Now. Co-host Pete DeCiani and myself, Ken Bartels, we're visiting with Tom Borchert, retiring city manager after 40 years in Elmhurst. And Tom, we're going to talk about some other things now. And the first thing I want to ask you is the successful use of TIFs, tax increment financing districts in Elmhurst, and particularly the first one, the downtown one, the one a lot of people remember.
Great question. Could be a long answer. I know you don't want too long of an answer, but I think, and do believe, and actually have been invited to speak in other jurisdictions about TIFs in general and TIFs Elmhurst style in specifics. Elmhurst has done it correctly, done it properly, and found the textbook application and need with TIF as a tool to solve a problem. And the Elmhurst Central Business District was ripe for fixing. In fact, I was pursuing a master's degree before I was married. My engineering assignment was involving some planning, and I did some work on Central Business District revitalization and did some field work at Leonard's Men's Store. And then it rolled forward. Leonard's Men's Store ended up being the mayor that I was working for as the TIF was being implemented. But the TIF allowed the city the tool to find the financing and have the resources necessary to embark on frankly, a complete revitalization of the Central Business District and revamping of it to become the center of the social goings and comings of the Elmhurst community, as well as a serious economic vital location with very, very successful restaurants and entertainment venues now serving the community.
I think many of the newer folks that have moved to our community from the city or from the suburbs, wherever they've come from, they look at the schools, they look at the downtown, and they don't realize, how from where our downtown has come from in the 70s and 80s. I think when Oak Brook Mall opened, I remember the downtown almost becoming like a ghost town, and it was scary because a lot of those stores were vacant, and the old Ruby's and the Keeler's restaurant that was by the show. A lot of those stores, fell victim to Oak Brook, and if it wasn't for that TIF district, if it wasn't for your leadership and even the elected officials' leadership at that time, I think Elmhurst would look a lot different if we didn't have the tool of TIF in place to help those businesses to have a fertile environment for those businesses to grow and to attract those businesses. And also, there's been many carve-outs in the TIF which have gone to the school district and the other taxing bodies that I think really are a testament to what you said, Elmhurst style. Is to grow the tax base and then give it back to the other taxing bodies at the right time.
I think it's a extraordinary strength of the Elmhurst community, the ability of the Park District and the school district and the city and the library. The city and the library are really kissing cousins already from a government perspective, but the park and the school are different governmental entities. But those four groups work well, pulling together for the broader community, and it really makes a difference. It really makes a difference. It's about change. The change happens whether you want it or not in a deterioration fashion, but change to happen in a positive fashion takes some strategic thinking. It takes a commitment to strive for it, to advocate for it, to pressure for it, because it's uncomfortable. I remember the deck that was built at Schiller Street needing to replace the parking because the parking needed to be where there were buildings and places for people to meet and greet each other, to have economic actions. And folks said, a deck in the suburbs, a deck in Elmhurst? Who is going to park in a deck? There was real concerns. And then the elected officials began to wonder, are we okay with building this deck? People are saying they're not going to park in a deck. They're not safe. And here we are many years later, and that deck was expanded with a second project. Then there was a deck on the south side of the tracks that was built and then expanded. And then the city now has recently completed its fifth deck project, which is nearly full
Right.
most days of the week at First at Large. Things change.
So shift gears a little bit, a different kind of question. 40 years, same employer, but 7 different mayors, I think. What about your personal leadership, management style has permitted you to work successfully with all of those mayors as well as countless city council members during that period of time?
Well, Ken, you're kind, and success is sometimes a perspective that's personal and not shared completely by all. But there's been ups and downs, but I have felt just naturally, I think from the old days in the neighborhood, being part of athletic teams, that if you're on a team, you're on a team, and you work for the team, and you work together to achieve team success. And really those grade school South Side of Chicago neighborhood experiences, I think, part of what formed me for these assignments in local government. But it's a team. It's a team, and the mayor and the city council lead the policy-making team, and the manager's the conduit then to the operations side that affects the delivery of the work product that the policymakers set. And I've enjoyed working with both members of the team, the elected official side and the operations side. I love working with people, and it's a strength of the Elmhurst community. It's people, both in the community and those that strive to volunteer in some fashion or another to make a difference.
What I found, not if serving as an alderman and really working with you before I became mayor, I found that you are extremely passionate about the job. You're an excellent listener, and you have an incredible amount of patience. You take on so many different issues, and the day-to-day workings of City Hall are really the city manager and staff. The elected officials, we're the policymakers, where most of us carry full-time jobs like myself, and we're here to give back and be leaders and do what we can to give back to Elmhurst. But the day-to-day workings are Tom Borchard and company and crew, and I have to say, over the 2 years that I've served with you, I think you've done a great job.
Thank you, Mayor. I go back to the founding fathers. They're way before all of us that said, what would be the best foundation for success going forward, and identified this mayor-manager form of government. Mayor-manager form of government. The checks and balances of the mayor in charge that's elected, represents the community, guides and directs and facilitates the success of the city council. But then a manager that's got that position as a full-time job, not just Monday through Friday, but Saturdays and Sundays and evenings and as necessary to run the day-to-day operations, and the checks and balances that are built into that system that are really designed for success going forward.
Well, and Mr. Mayor, as you would well know, but we inform the viewers, the plaque, the framed print rather, across the room from the city manager's desk is a big square that says perseverance on it. And I think perseverance would be in there somewhere as a trait of not only management but leadership. It's that patience and listening that you brought up. Change, you mentioned it a few minutes ago. It's a constant, maybe the only constant in our lives really, but the greatest changes that you would perceive, changes that you believe that you have seen, and not necessarily physical like underpass, but just changes in the way things are in Elmhurst over 40 years?
Well, that's a big question. I gotta disagree with what you told me to not consider. As a civil engineer, I gotta go with some of the infrastructure changes. I love the people, but I really have enjoyed the infrastructure. And over the years, appropriately, just about every major infrastructure component of the cities has been redone, re-engineered, redesigned, and then rebuilt, and been very, very gratifying to be a part of that. And the other similar change, again in an upward fashion, is the use of technology, use of computers, the speed at which information flows and expectations of response are out there. The ability of the public sector, police and fire, the public safety folks, incredible improvements in their equipment to serve the community on the police side and on the fire side. Their training in hazardous materials, the training in difficult safety efforts to remove folks from trapped vehicles, the ability to really serve the community has ratcheted upward. Been exciting to be a part of it.
City Manager Borchard's involved in a legislative opportunity right now. We're trying to, we came up with this idea, and actually Chief Neubauer researched it in this way to find lost people that are disabled. And here was an issue of legislation in Illinois, and City Manager Borchard's taking the lead on it, and getting our DuPage mayors and managers supportive of this effort, and we've got a bill down in Springfield to make that happen. But there's so many things that go on behind the scenes that people don't see that this man does, which I think is just incredible. I think of infrastructure and economic development, what you did with the old, Public Works garage, and how we have a brand new Portillo's and a brand new Dominic's, and a Kohl's that was all part of a project that was originally on its way down and out. Some very good vision and forethought and leadership, not only on your end but also Mayor Marcucci, that did some land swapping, and now we have a vibrant corner that's bringing in, not only is it a great place to look and visit, I shop there myself weekly, but it's just a great, I think, show of planning and forethought and revenue for our schools and jobs for our constituents. It's what's, I think, great about local government.
And I have to say, those things don't necessarily just happen. Even though they should happen, or there's an opportunity for them to happen, it takes people to implement it. And I'm enjoying working on many of the projects, Mayor DeCiani, that you're bringing to the table, your perspective, things that are still in the working stage that I'm aware of, you're aware of, that aren't ready to be released yet, but are like, well, Mr. Mayor, if you're okay with that, I'm okay with it. I think that'd be a good thing. We're going to have to do some work to make that happen. That's what happened with Mayor Marcucci when he dragged me to the top of that excavated material hill at 83 in St. Charles, and he asked me what I saw on the other side, and I'm thinking, man, oh man, I got 4 years with this mayor. We all know it's Route 83 over there. And I said, that's Route 83. And he goes, that shouldn't be what you see when you're on a pile of dirt. We should be in a shopping center. Let's make it a shopping center. Mr. Mayor, that's a lot of work. We're going to have to do a lot of stuff. It's going to take a lot of legislative action, and I'm game if you're game. I think you're right. We should be making some changes here, and it took a lot of political will, a lot of mayor leadership, a lot of city council support, and some effort on the operations side to pull it all together. It took a lot of private side assistance with willing business people that were like, no way. All right, tell me more. And after time, okay, we'll proceed. And it was a win-win-win for everybody. And I think still more positive things will happen at 83 in St. Charles as time goes forward.
Another example of a successful TIF. Challenges today, Tom, as you sort of exit the stage, if you will, and of course the mayor is here as well for both of you, I guess. Challenges today as you perceive them.
I think things go around and they come back again. And there's a book on my bookshelf that I read maybe 15 years ago, and the title is Reinventing Government. And what you said, tomorrow isn't necessarily what we do because we did it yesterday. We do things for success tomorrow. And there was a lot of reinventing government that led to some of the public-private partnerships. A number of public-private partnerships have helped Elmhurst in economic development, but there's huge pressures today because there are economic issues that we all have, we all struggle with, and the communities that we serve are saying, we like the services, we'd even like them better, but figure out how to do it for less taxes or less of a fee. So there's real pressure to reinvent government again, and I see government consolidation. You see it on the private side. There's 3 businesses vying for the same stuff, and over time then there's only 2 businesses because they consolidated and they're able to do things more efficient and more effective and more productive. I see that as a challenge, and I see governments. Mayor DeCiani's suggested some consolidation matters that could be looked at. I see it at the county, see it at other areas where overlapping areas of government should figure out how to fix those overlaps and be able to do it more efficiently, effectively going forward. But it's a challenge because people don't like change.
I think City Manager Borchert too has been an expert and just a pro in getting, not only consolidation but more so working together. And I think that's one thing that Elmhurst has been strong with between the college and the Park District, especially school district. So many different ways that you've embraced unity between those governmental bodies, which is another way of maximizing those resources and tax dollars. And I think you've been a leader for the community and always at a level head. And again, a great relationship builder, which has been, I think, key to our success.
Final question, and I'll make it a 2-part question just to be difficult for you. That is, what will you miss the most as you stop being city manager after such a long tenure? And what's next?
Well, I don't think there's any question I'm going to miss the wonderful people that I've worked with at various levels. The other folks in other jurisdictions that we work with, but the team that is assembled that serves Elmhurst City Hall, that work team has become a family away from family, and all of those wonderful relationships with the Elmhurst community I'll miss the most. What I'm hoping to move on to will be more time with other people that mean a lot to me, my family. We've got 4 wonderful grandchildren and 4 wonderful children, 6 wonderful grandchildren, 3 daughter son-in-laws, all in the Grand Rapids area. We'll be spending more time in the Grand Rapids area with them. But I hope to split that time with maybe half time working back in local government in some less intense fashion. Probably would enjoy that government work more on a regular basis and not so many night meetings, not so many chicken dinners at banquets, understanding what other jurisdictions are giving us for information for the evening. So that's the plan. Family and still keeping a hand in local government service work. Want to stay in the game. It's been a lot of fun.
I think we've been blessed to have a city manager, actually 2, but I'm much more working with Mr. Borchert, but resident. He moved his family here. He raised his kids here. Is part of the fabric, understands what's going on, and I think that's just been a huge attribute that brings him to be the manager that he is.
Well, Tom, these shows go by so quickly, as Pete and I know, and our time is complete. But I want to close with a couple of things. Number one, on May 13, we will be having a tribute for Tom Borchert. He has agreed to let the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation host a tribute for him at the Diplomat Banquet Hall on May 13, and you can get that information at the Elmhurst Heritage Foundation website, which is elmhurstheritagefoundation.org. You can also call the Historical Museum, and we hope many of you, a great many of you, will come out for a tribute to a distinguished leader and a wonderful city manager and a perfect example of the kind of story that we have here in Elmhurst, Illinois. So for Tom Borchert and Mayor Pete DeCiani, I'm Ken Bartels, and this has been Elmhurst Now, and thank you for watching.
Hi, I'm Elmhurst Police Chief Steve Neubauer. Elmhurst is a great place to live and work. However, we are not crime-free. Many people in our community become victims of crime simply because they did not lock their belongings. I would ask you to do two things. First, lock your car, house, and bike. Secondly, call 911 to report suspicious activity to the Elmhurst Police Department. The Elmhurst Police Department reminds you to lock it or lose it.
There are several thousand collisions involving trains each year, which result in over 1,000 injuries and several hundred deaths. A majority of these deaths occur when someone is struck by a train while trespassing on railroad property. Remember, railroad property is private property. Trespassing along railroad property is not only against the law, it's very dangerous. Avoid taking shortcuts. The only safe place to cross railroad tracks is at a designated crossing. Don't get caught dead on the tracks. Stay off, stay away, stay alive.
Making the world a better place is an intricate puzzle, and piece by piece, the women and men of Rotary have worked hard to fight hunger, promote literacy, and move the world toward peace. But there is still much to be done, still some missing pieces, and one of those missing pieces is you. Learn how you can help Rotary put together a better world.